Hi, Maria. Today is June 24th, 2020. My name is Leo Valdez. I'm interviewing Maria Juarez for the Rutgers Latino New Jersey History Project and for the Voces of the Pandemic Project, the Voces Oral History at the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. Please know, Maria, that this interview will be placed in the Nettie Lee Benson Latin American Collection at UT Austin and the Rutgers Oral History Archives. If there's anything you do not wish to answer or discuss, I will honor your wishes. Also, if there is something you would like to discuss, please make sure to bring it up and we'll talk about it. Because we are not conducting this interview in person, I need to record your verbal consent. Voces wishes to archive your interview along with any other photographs and other documentation at the Benson Library at UT Austin and the Rutgers Oral History Archives at Rutgers. We will retain copyright of the interview and any other materials you donate to Voces and Rutgers. So I need your response to these 3 questions. Please say, yes, I agree, or no, I do not agree after each one. Do you give Voces and Rutgers consent to archive your interview and your materials, whatever you donate, at the Benson Library?
Yes, I agree.
Do you grant Voces and Rutgers copyright over the interview and any material you provide?
Yes, I agree.
And do you agree to allow us to post this interview on the internet where it may be viewed by people around the world?
Yes, I agree.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for being with me here today. So, Maria, tell me a little bit about your grandparents and your parents and where you're from.
Hi, my name is Maria. About my grandparents, my grandparents from both sides, paternal and maternal, would be from Mexican descent. So they were born, all 4 of them were born and raised in Oaxaca. So I have, I didn't really have interaction with a lot of my paternal grandparents because I came here when I was very young. But when we did travel to Mexico, I did get to spend some time with my maternal grandfather and my paternal grandmother. When I was born, both my maternal grandmother and my paternal grandfather had already passed away, so I never got to meet them. I did interact with both every time that I traveled to Mexico from the United States for, I would say, 5 consecutive years that we traveled to Mexico.
And what did your grandparents do for a living?
Honestly, I do not know. I really did not get to know my my grandparents when I was growing up. When I visited my paternal grandmother was, I could say, a stay-home grandparent. She raised my cousin, so I never saw her working. She was basically taken care by my relatives and from my father's side. And the same thing I could say about my maternal grandfather. He grew land. I know, like, he grew crops in Oaxaca, but other than that, I don't really know what how they worked before when they were younger or anything. Basically, that's as much as I know about my grandparents.
Did you say he owned his own land or he worked on somebody else's land growing crops?
No, both sides of my family own their own land. So they grow their own land.
Interesting. So both sides of your family were from Oaxaca. What about your parents? What was their upbringing like that you know of?
Both of them were actually born and raised in Oaxaca, 2 small towns in Oaxaca that they grew up in, different towns but close to each other. And then my mother, because I know that my mother had a, you could say, rough upbringing. To a lot of siblings. My grandmother, my mother's mother, actually passed away when she was very young. She was only 2 years old. So it was very hard for her, I guess, growing up. And my grandfather remarried. So I have a lot of uncles and aunts from my grandfather's second marriage, about 13, you could say, uncles and aunts, and 6 from my mom's original, my mom's mother. My mother being the youngest. I know that when she was 18, she moved to Mexico City for a better life. And even though they were from very, very small towns, my mother and my father didn't really know each other in Oaxaca. They basically met and had a relationship when they were both in Mexico City. So she lived there for, I'm assuming, 3-4 years before they had I have an older sister, a year-old sister, 1 year older sister than I am. So she and I were both born in Mexico. I was born in the capital, and my sister was born in the outskirts of Mexico City. And then we lived all our lives there in Mexico City. And then, actually, no, we lived in Mexico City, and then we moved to Morelos, which is another town in another city in Mexico, very close to Mexico City. And from there, we came to California.
When you were living in Mexico City and also in Morelos, what were your parents doing at that time to provide for the family?
I'm sorry, you got cut off. I couldn't really hear what you were saying.
No problem. I was just asking, when you lived in Mexico City and Morelos, your upbringing, your youth in Mexico City, what was that like? Did you own your own home? Did you rent an apartment? What were your parents doing to make a living?
We owned our own home. My mom and my dad worked. I don't really, I think they used to sell items like shampoo and stuff like that. I know my mom did that. I don't really know what my dad did. I never really asked. I'm pretty sure my mom would tell me. I just don't really ask much about my dad. But I know they both worked and they owned their own land. And then my father had dreams to be a professional wrestler. So that's why we came to the United States. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. That was going to be my next question. What motivated your parents to bring you, the whole family to the United States and specifically to California?
Yes, that would be the reason. My father's dreams to pursue a career as a professional wrestler. And then for a better quality of life, I guess. I don't think, in my eyes, that, like I've always told my mom, I don't think we live bad in Mexico. I think it was harder for me over here just because we were a family. And then when we moved over here, my mother left my father. So it was a little bit harder for us because we were basically being raised by a single mother in the United States. And in Mexico, we, for what I remember, didn't have that struggle. Like we had a family, was my sister, myself, and then my parents. And yeah, we owned our home. We had somebody who helped with, the cleaning and the cooking, but I didn't, as you're young, so you don't know if your parents are struggling or not. So to me, it wasn't a struggle. And then we came here, we had to adapt to a new language, different people, and different things. Being a single, raised by a single mother, and it was somewhat difficult for me as a young person, going from a family to a new country without a father. And because they let my father left, my mother left my father when we came to the United States.
How old were you when you came to the United States?
I was around 4 years old when I came to the United States. And then my mom was pregnant for my younger brother, and she wanted him to be born in Mexico. So we went back to Mexico and we lived in Morelos. We established ourselves back in Mexico. He was born in Mexico. And then we came back when I was 6 years old.
Do you know why your mom wanted him to be born in Mexico and not the United States?
Yes, it's because you take pride of where you're from, and my mom really wanted all of us to be Mexicans. So yes.
So then the five of you then came back to the United States after your brother was born? Is that what happened?
Well, no, it was only my mom and my siblings, and my only sibling, that went back to Mexico. And then when my younger sibling was born, we came back to the United States. My father stayed here in the United States.
Okay, I see.
In California. Mm-hmm.
In California. And you were with him then as well?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. We were still living together, but my father, I guess, when we went to Mexico, started having another family. Like, he had another family. I have some siblings from my father's side, which motivated my mother to end the relationship, because obviously she didn't want to have, to have a family, a double family, you could say. Mm-hmm.
So what was it like growing up in California? How many years did you live there?
We lived in California for, say, 2 years in California. A total of maybe three, off and off, when we went to Mexico. But actually, that was the reason that we moved to New Jersey, because my mother wanted to stay as far away from, the troubles with my father having another family in California. So one of my uncles actually lived here in New Jersey and said, you don't have to stay there, and you don't have to go or put the kids through that, because then my father's wife would come and basically harass the family. So then my family wasn't okay with us being exposed to that. So we moved to New Jersey.
So that's you said your mom grew up with many siblings. She was the youngest. So
Correct.
one of your uncles was already living in New Jersey. Do you have any idea what brought him to New Jersey, how he ended up there and not somewhere else?
Actually, no, he was an uncle because he's my mom's cousin. It wasn't like a uncle from, like, her siblings. My mom was actually the first uh, in the family to travel to the United States with one of my younger uncles, I'm sorry, from my grandfather's second marriage. So they both, like, my uncle from my grandfather's second marriage came with my mom, as well as and then the second time that we came to the United States was with my aunt from my grandfather's second marriage. The uncle that came here, I guess, is just for the one, my mom's cousin. It's for the same reason. I think that most of the Mexicans, unlike other people, say it's because of, here to do harm to this country. It's just you want a better quality of life. I think a lot of the people that I've known, or that I've interacted when we go to Mexico, it's not that you grow bad, but it's a poor, it's a poor country, where a lot of the places that I visited were very poor. So there's not a lot of money to go around and feed your, like, not a lot of employments. I'm sorry. A lot of the towns that we visited, you have to grow your own land, and that's it. You get money from that. But if something happens to your land or something, it's harder for you to make a decent living than it is here in the United States. Because here you work, you have to pay bills. It's, you grow apart from your immediate family. Maybe you left your husband, your wife, your children, your mother, your father, which is a lot of the cases that I hear, but you have a better quality of life, which is, the American dream, you could say, pursuing the American dream.
And give me 1 second. I'm going to close the window just to make sure that no more sound comes in.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So in terms of, this American dream that you're talking about, tell me a little bit about what it was like growing up in New Jersey. Where exactly did you land? Where was your uncle living? Did you and your mom live with your uncle? And how old were you, and where was that? Was that New Brunswick or East Brunswick? Where was it?
I first came to New Jersey, to New Brunswick, and it was here in New Brunswick. And yes, we first came with my uncle, with my mother's cousin. and he helped us out. Then we had other relatives here who lived us here in New Brunswick as well. So we all kind of had a, even though we didn't live together, we would help each other out, like employment wise, or how to register your child to school, things like that, where to get food. Yeah, it was it was a way different New Brunswick than it is now. When we came here, I did not know any other Mexican in the schools that I went to. A lot of them were either African American, Puerto Rican, Peruvian. I don't remember having any Mexican friends when we first came to New Brunswick. It's not like it is now. It was completely different. It was hard to get any Mexican products. So there was a gentleman who everybody knows, like in the town, called Lipe Tortilla. He would take Mexican products around his van, and you get all happy and excited because you have tortillas and stuff like that you wouldn't see. Like, it wasn't as easy as it is now to get a lot of the Mexican authentic meals that you do now here in New Brunswick. So it's a way different world, but it was still nice because a lot of people were willing to help, and to it was a community where I found that a lot of people were willing to help us out with, we came from a tropical, I guess, climate. So our clothing was, you could say, summer clothing. And then we came in, I think it was the almost the end of winter, which I think was in April, or around that time, or close to summer, but it was still cold. So it's, it's a different, like, what? It's really this cold and you have to get new clothing. So and a lot of people help us out because obviously we didn't we didn't know anything. We didn't own a car. My mom did not drive then. So it was different and a little difficult, but thank God we were blessed to have a lot of support, community support, not only from relatives, but just people that randomly would help us out. Mm-hmm.
And you came, that was in the mid to late 80s that you came to New Brunswick?
It was the late 80s because yes, the late 80s. My brother was very young. He's from the late 80s.
So tell me a little bit more about your experience growing up. How old were you? Did you enter grade school or did you enter middle school? You came here in the winter. Did you go immediately into school, or what was that like?
Yes, I went immediately to school. I'm so sorry to have interrupted you. Yes, we came immediately to school. She registered. Obviously, it's late. June, school ends June, so we had like a couple months left into the school year. I had to stay that year back because I wasn't in school here, and they I don't know what they had said here in New Brunswick, and they wanted me to, I guess, catch up with the education here in New Brunswick. So it was a little hard, I think, because I didn't know anybody, and it was a lot of traveling for me. So I started in school in Mexico, and then you have to get up and leave to California, then go back to Mexico and do education there, and then go back to California, start school there, and then not be able to finish and come to New Brunswick. So it was a lot of moving, so I didn't really get to make any friends, I guess, and I was very timid back then. I would not speak. I would just look at you, and I would not even say hi. I was very shy back then, so it was really hard, growing up, and different languages. Even though in California a lot of people do speak English, there was a lot of also Latinos that were, that would speak Spanish. Over here it was a little harder. There was a few, and then even though we're all Latino, we're all basically speak the same. Some of the words are different, so it was a little harder. It was different. Like, I wasn't used to seeing Puerto Ricans or Peruvians or Dominicans. It was just like either you're Mexican or Mexican American. And there was so it was different. It was difficult. Then, the children were nice here, but a lot of, I would have to say that when I came to New Brunswick, a lot of the African American community was very kind to me. They were really taking me under their wings. So when I was in school, and they would show me around the school, or if I didn't understand something, a few of the children in my grade would help me out with that.
Wow. What school did you go to in New Brunswick?
I went to Roosevelt School, which remains the same as I left it when I was in school.
Is
Yeah.
that a, just so the audience knows, is that a middle school or a high school?
Well, when I went to school there, it was an intermediate school, so it went from kindergarten to 8th grade, and then I actually graduated from 8th grade from Roosevelt. So that was the only school that I went to here in New Brunswick. And now it's a what is it called? I don't really know. It's an elementary school, so they cut it off from kindergarten to 5th grade, and then you go to the middle school from 6th grade to 8th grade in New Brunswick. But before, it was, you were there. You start there, you end there till the 8th grade, and you would move to either to the high school or the vocational school.
So just trying to understand a little bit, you mentioned some challenges that you had growing up and going to school, and here, not so many Mexicans, more Puerto Ricans and African Americans and some Peruvians. So there were challenges, but there was also a lot of people who helped you. So would you say the challenges were like dealing with the school system? I'm just trying to understand, the challenges and then the help, and a little bit more detail about that, or any stories that might illustrate it that you remember.
I think to me, a challenge was to make friends. Like I said, in the community, a lot of the older people were, like the community, and when we were in school, a lot of people were out helping us. But in school, it was a little rough. I don't know if it was because, and this might offend some people. This is my experience. This is what I've seen. I think that as Latinos, we don't come together to help each other, the younger generation. I have to say very honestly, when I came here, it was the Latinos that did help us out, with clothing or shopping, or this is where you have to go and enroll your children because of the language maybe. And I didn't really experience that one-on-one. My mother was the one who had to deal with a lot of that. But in school, it was a little hard because I feel that a lot of the Latinos, without even knowing me, were very mean to me. They would like pick on me, and they were, little like abusive. They would say they would beat me up, which I think I never got beat up, but they would make threats like that. And then the African American community, which was, in school, that they would like, wait, what's going on? Like, she just started school. What are you guys doing? And they would be like, you know what, back up. Don't bother her. So I became very close to the African American community because they were nice to me, and the students were the Latino students, which were Puerto Rican, Dominican. I think there was a Mexican, but I can't remember. I know one of them was Peruvian. They were not so willing to be nice to me or make me feel welcome. It was more like I don't know. It was weird. It wasn't like I did anything to them. They just from day one started like, they would talk and giggle about me or make comments about my last name. I remember because I was the only Juarez. Like, what is Juarez? Like, nobody had that last name. It's typical, the Torres, Rodriguez, Rivera. They're like, they make you feel like you're an alien or something, and not like, well, whatever, but that was it. And then, the complications, because every school is different. So what I thought I knew in school in California wasn't what they were expecting here. And I felt very scared here. I remember the teachers here would raise their voice at you, and one of them actually hit. I didn't have that teacher, but my sister did. So it scared me because my mother did not beat us up. We were not raised in an environment where, hitting was a solution. My mom even barely raised her voice at us. So it was hard for me to know that somebody other than my mom, or I didn't feel safe that somebody at school would be able, an adult would be able to help me, and my mom never did. So it was different. Or scream at you and like, what are you doing? Like, why do you need to scream? It's something different. And in California, it wasn't like that. The teachers were very, while I was in kindergarten, and so maybe that's why it's all songs and play with your toys and play with this. And when you come over here, it's like, no, you need to do this. Or you see other children misbehaving, and they get punished in a way that you're not used to. So that what to me was hard. For me, it was very difficult to understand how they could, like, the different teaching techniques, I could say, based on what I've lived before.
Definitely. I'm curious if you have any sense of why the teachers were different in California and in New Jersey, why they used more corporal punishment in New Jersey.
I would say that a lot of the ones that I would hear screaming, I don't know, because I had a really good teacher here in New Brunswick, Miss Miller. I actually saw her even after I graduated. There's some I have no idea. Like, I don't know why they were so different, but I thought it was first, maybe, you raise Latino, a lot of Latinos are like, okay, go hit them, or you don't see, what I've seen, it's there's a lot of people that I don't have to be Latino, they hit their children, but to me, it's more common to hear a Latino friend tell me, oh, growing up, I got beat up with a chancla. And to hear, I went to Brunswick, I never heard that, so that's how I see it. Like, some people might get offended, or some people might not agree, and it's okay. It's just unfortunately, those were my experiences. I didn't see that much of abuse, and a lot of the teachers here were abusive, and I would have to say they were Latino. Yeah.
The teachers were Latino.
Correct.
The abusive teachers were the Latino.
Correct.
I see. And were they targeting Latinos students, do you think, or all kinds of students?
I think all kinds of students, because there was a very diverse student population in all the classrooms here when we came to New Brunswick. So it wasn't,
So what was your life like outside of school? Did you play with neighborhood kids? Who were your neighbors like? Were they Puerto Rican? What was your neighborhood like a little bit?
Yes, we had a little bit of everything. Growing up here in New Brunswick, I had a lot of Honduran and Dominican friends and Puerto Rican friends. There wasn't, like I said, I don't remember any childhood, like when I first came to New Brunswick, any Mexicans in this area. So a lot of my friends, I would have to say, were what I saw outside of school. My mom was very big on education, so she always wanted us to do our homework and to do well in school, but she was also a single mother, so she had a lot of work to do. So she would always tell us, you have to do your schoolwork, but sometimes we wouldn't see her because she worked a lot. So we did play a lot. I grew up with my cousins, my cousin from my father's side and my aunt from my mother's side. So basically it was the three musketeers, my mom and my two relatives, my cousin and my aunt. And they basically we all helped each other. Well, they all helped each other raise myself and my siblings. So while my mom worked, they would help us, with cooking and cleaning, and we would get to play and do our homework. We didn't really have to have any work. We didn't do any labor or anything like that. It was more education and play growing up.
Responsibilities.
Yes, correct.
What did your mom do?
My mom worked in a factory. 2 factories, actually. She worked 2 shifts, so she worked in I think a factory, and then also cleaning houses when she came. Mm-hmm.
What did they make at the factory? I don't know if you said and I didn't catch it.
No, I don't really know what was her first job. I know she worked for the toy factory right there on Joyce Gilmore for a long time, but it wasn't her first job here in New Brunswick. So I know she worked for many years, until they closed, actually, the Pressman toy factory. But I don't really know like what kind of factory work she did.
So she basically held two jobs, working at a factory and also, you said, cleaning houses.
Correct.
That's a lot.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you recall what her experience was like a little bit? Or even from your child eyes, what do you remember? Did she still manage to, was she at home, cooking meals for you? Or because you said you didn't have a lot of responsibilities. So a little bit about that.
So most of the time, my mom was working. So, like I said, my cousins would help a lot. Like my aunt and my cousins would be the ones in charge of cooking or taking care of us because she was working. Hmm. So, yeah,
No, go ahead.
I don't really have many memories with her just because I know that when we speak about it as adults, she's like, you know what, we come chasing an American dream and it's making money, and then you neglect to spend time with your family or do things with your children. And that's one of the things that she's like worried about, making money. And that obviously takes time and a lot of work, so she really didn't have time to spend with us till I was around 13, 14 years old. Hmm.
So around that age, 13, 14, you were no longer in Roosevelt School, right? Because that went till eighth
No,
grade.
correct. I was so what happened when I was in Roosevelt is that I started there, but then because of the family growing, like we had a lot of cousins come to the United States from my father's side, and even though I didn't interact much with my father, one of my cousins that basically raised me, was a cousin from my father's side. So she's my father's sister's daughter. So we grew up with her, and then a lot of her siblings started coming in. So we obviously needed a bigger house and everything. So we moved to Somerset. So when we moved to Somerset, I went to, first Franklin Park School and then Connerly Road School, which are schools in Somerset, Franklin, New Jersey. And then when we all kind of separated, when we were all more stable, we could provide, I guess, for a home of our own, and everybody's family was growing. Obviously, they all came young and without a family. Now they want to start having a family. It's not, you can't find a big enough place for to accommodate many people. And we moved back to New Brunswick. So then I went back to Roosevelt because I was in sixth grade by then. So in sixth and eighth grade, I was in Roosevelt, and then yeah. So it wasn't that I was all from like second, third grade to eighth grade in Roosevelt. I moved a lot from first from house to house here in New Brunswick, and then finally to Somerset, then back to New Brunswick. Mm-hmm.
That is a lot of moving.
Mm-hmm.
How did
Correct.
that impact your experience? What was that like? All the moving.
I think it's something we um, grew to adapt just because we were so used to it. I mean, we had never had a stable home. Like we moved from Mexico to outskirts of Mexico, then to a different town in Morelos, then to California, then back to Mexico, then back to California, then to New Jersey. I think you become so like blah, like it is just that, you keep on moving, you adjust to the changes. Um, I don't think it was that difficult for me because you're a kid. You don't really need to adjust too much other than than school. And I guess since I was exposed from at a young age, I can't say like a lot of children can remember. Like now, I tell my kids, let's move out of. Well, they started in East Brunswick, and now we came to New Brunswick, and I want to move out. And they're like, no, we already created that bond here. But I don't ever remember telling my mom or ever feeling we're moving again. Like, I don't want to do that. I was okay with it because that's all I knew, I guess. So it wasn't that hard for me to adjust.
Mm. And so what was your high school experience like? Where did you go to high school?
I went to Piscataway Vocational School, which is it's a high school, but you also come out with some type of certification so you could work. I went for there for they give you different options. I really didn't know what I wanted to do, what career I wanted to take. So my mom said, I'm definitely not going to have you not graduate. Like, that's not happening. So I'm going to send you to the high school so you could end up dropping out. The dropout rate here in New Brunswick has always been horrendous. So I know that she knew that much because she definitely said, the high school is not going to be an option for you because I don't want you to be a dropout. Like, I did not come to the United States to have you fail in your life. So we're going to do something. She was very, very strong with that, with my education. With all our education, she always wanted us to, my mother unfortunately did not get past the second grade because, it was hard for them, I guess, not growing up without a mother and an alcoholic father. So I guess it was hard, it was hard for her to see her children fail. And in her, like, I am doing all the sacrifices, I'm doing all of this so that you could have a better future. And she always made it known to us, like, that's why. So she said, you're definitely you choose either, I think it was the Votech or another school, and I really right now can't remember what school it was, but I knew that a few of my friends were going to the Votech, so I'm like, you know what, let me just go to the Votech, and they give you different options of what you want to do, like if you want to be a cook, secretary, mechanic, or whatever. So I took the business office technology and medical office technology, and I graduated from Piscataway Votech. Mm-hmm.
So what is this? This is a public school, right?
Correct.
But it's one you can choose to go to?
Correct.
Okay.
So it's a vocational school, so you get to choose. So they provided transportation from all over, like Part1. There was children that lived in Plainfield there, Part1, Piscataway, New Brunswick, like this. I guess the like a Middlesex area. You either choose that vocational school. There's the East Brunswick Votech. There was one here in New Brunswick, but my mom during that time there was a lot of gang related problems and a lot of things that my mom did not want to expose us to. So she said, New Brunswick is out of the question. You're definitely not going there. Choose something else that you could do. So then I decided to go to Piscataway Votech.
Were you aware of the, what you said, the gang problems? Did you have friends involved in those kinds of activities? Or were you just removed and your mom just kind of shielding you from it?
No, we were very aware. It's something that you grew up here, growing here in New Brunswick. Like, I think it's because also I'm growing up, my brother and I were more talkative. We were more outgoing. And so my mom always has this argument with us where she says, no, is that you didn't grow up with it, you exposed yourself to it or whatever. But it's not, because I remember, my mom was the type of mother that even though she worked really hard, she was very on top of us. So I remember going to school, she would walk us to school because she couldn't walk us on a daily basis to school. I remember her walking us to school on a weekend and saying, oh, this is how long it took for you to get from the house to school. It should take you the same amount of time that it took us. So at this time, I'm going to call home. We were, growing up alone, I guess, like with my older sister. So she would always make sure that we were doing the right thing. You do see a lot of things, but we were too scared of getting in trouble with my mother that we would not get involved. Like, I would rather get beaten by my mother than somebody at school. Like, I would always say, like, when you start getting to know gangs and they started trying to get you involved, I remember my answer was, like, why are you not joining? I'm like, because whatever you could do, I'm pretty sure it's not as bad as what my mom would be able to do. I mean, that's my mom, so it wasn't that we weren't exposed. I'm sorry. It wasn't that we weren't exposed. It was just my mom. We knew better than to and my mom was very involved in our growing up. You know, even though she worked a lot, she made sure that she knew that when we were home, and if we weren't, to let us know that, you know, there was consequences to us not making the right choices.
So how did you choose the business vocational track at your school, and where did that lead you?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question. Can you repeat it? Something
Yes.
like I couldn't. Mm-hmm.
No problem. And just let me know if we need to stop the recording, you know, if you have something to do or something. If we get interrupted, that's fine. Okay.
No, it's okay. What happened is that you kept on cutting off. I don't know why. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thanks for letting me know. No, I was asking that how did you choose your business track at your high school, and where did that lead you? Like, did you do internships throughout high school? Did you start working throughout high school? Or did you just take classes and then after you graduated, you know, you went off to work?
Correct. So I did not take internships during high school. I just went straight. I just went to school, and from school, a couple months. It was like my senior year. My mom was like, "Oh, you know, you're young, you're teenage, so you want different things that what your parents give to you." So one of the things that my mom said was, "Well, if you want something that I'm not giving you, you have to work for it, because I work for what I give you." So she's like, "You know what? You're gonna go work." So I worked at an ice cream parlor in my senior year at Actually, no, I'm lying. I was very like, "Oh no, I'm not gonna have people look at me and see that I'm working. You know what? It's fine." I'm not gonna, whatever you buy me is fine. It's perfectly fine. I don't want that. I started working like when I graduated from my senior year at ice cream parlor to make money. No, she wouldn't. I didn't want to go to work, especially, you know, having people see me working. I don't know. It's weird. But no, I didn't do an internship. I went straight from my senior year when I graduated. Then I started working at a hotel as a receptionist at the Clarion Hotel in Towers. And a couple months later, one of my the father of my children's cousins said, "You know what? They're hiring at a preschool. All she has to do is translate. She has a high school diploma. You could do that." So that's when I started getting involved with a preschool program. That's when actually the preschool that's, you know, there's a contract that a lot of failing districts in New Jersey have, the Bert versus Abbott lawsuit. You know, they won a lawsuit, so they wanted to implement preschool because they said it, you know, they would have a better opportunity of having a better education if there was preschool in New Brunswick, Part Amboy, Elizabeth, towns like that. So I started working for a program like that. Mm-hmm.
I see. This is interesting. I just want to get some more of the details. So you started working as an interpreter in this preschool, and then there was a lawsuit.
No, I'm sorry. That's why I started working in the preschool. Even before the lawsuit, you know, I wasn't involved in the lawsuit or anything. It was part of a lawsuit, and that's why they had preschools here in New Brunswick, and all you had to have was a high school diploma and be able to, you know, pick up whatever they taught you there. Like you take classes for, to work with families, like a family liaison, like the family workers, that type of, yeah. So it was something that happened before I even, a year before I started working, actually. You know, Abbott said that was part of the Abbott, you know, how we didn't have the same thing that happens with the same problem that we have here in New Brunswick, the lack of opportunities that districts like New Brunswick have to further your education, basically.
Yeah, I'm curious. That's what was interesting to me about the struggle that you're involved in with right now, and just it sounded like there were some similarities. Do you remember the lawsuit Abbott versus another name? Is that what it was called? Just for
Bert,
his historical sake.
yes, yes, correct. Is the Abbott versus Bert lawsuit, and it's the No Child Left Behind portion of it. So basically, they said they were going to implement preschool because if they start children at a younger age, which to me, because I worked on it and I know, I think it is very possible, but I think it's harder because a lot of the, as I'm seeing it now, I don't think a lot with education overall, I don't think that they really want to educate children. A lot of this administrators, they just want to keep the children where they're at, as from what I'm seeing, from my point of view.
So what was it working in the preschool, that your first job in that career track, like?
It was a great experience. I remember that I was very young, so it's funny because I started like a translator. A lot of the families, obviously, the community is a lot of a lot of Mexicans parents. So and a lot of them didn't speak English. So a lot of the preschool owners and the teachers only spoke English. So it was a hard time. I think to be able to communicate with parents. And then my supervisor felt that I had a very strong will, so she said, you know what, you're gonna take a course so that you could become a family uh, worker. And I'm like, I don't know because I'm not that good. My Spanish wasn't that great in Spanish. Like it still isn't. Nor is my English, but it was really bad. Like my Spanish was not. I wasn't as fluent in many words. There was many words that I did not know how to translate. So I was like, I don't think this is a good idea because it's a learning experience, but bear with me. So no, they were very nice and understanding, and it was something that it was. I guess it was something better than nothing because I did speak somewhat Spanish. Hmm.
So
So
you obtained a certificate through this further training?
correct. So in order to be a family worker, you had to have a parents as teachers certificate. So it's a 5-year program. Well, it goes beyond 5 years, but you have to go through steps of taking classes and then being able to do home visits with families to know what might be some of the reasons why the children are not succeeding in the classroom. Why are they not talking? What's going on in their whole environment that has is stopping them from furthering their education. So basically, I had to do that and log it, and then we would have state meetings where we would bring up our concerns. Like in this community, this is what we've noticed when we go do home visits or situations like that. Yeah, and then they took that program off. I stayed as a family worker there, but then we had a FDC, which is the Family Development credential, which is through Rutgers. So they pay for you to go to take classes at Rutgers, and you get certified also as a family worker, so that you could further understand why is it that the families are the way they are, how they're living, and how to support them, how to get resources for them here when I worked here in New Brunswick, like how to work with families and help them with their needs, their basic needs, which is, from immigration to child abuse to domestic abuse to a lot of concerns that we saw. Transportation, a lot of the families here don't have transportation, don't understand the language. So everything from school to the importance of immunizations and all of that, like the whole family environment you would have to get involved with. Mm-hmm.
So you were kind of acting like a social worker. That's what a family
Correct.
worker.
Correct.
So I'm curious about these changes, because now you're like in your late teens, early 20s, working, full time, and there's now a lot of Mexicans that you're seeing,
Mm-hmm.
correct? And as opposed
Correct.
to when you were in grade school, that was not the case. So
Correct.
tell me a little bit about how you noticed those changes.
Honestly, I'm gonna be very honest. As a kid, I don't remember noticing those changes. It's as an adult that I realized that, things were different. Like I was like one day, I don't know, my brother and I were talking about like, wow, like how has it changed? Like before there was not a lot of this, or now there's a lot of that, or how the streets have changed, how a lot of, the surroundings and the people that, um, because I went to Piscataway, I didn't really get involved with the New Brunswick, I guess, community, so I didn't see that change through my high school. I noticed it more when I started working. It was noticeable because I lived here, but I wasn't really like, you could say I wasn't really involved in it because I didn't, I didn't, my mom was very strict, so she wouldn't let us out, so I didn't really know much about, unless we went out shopping maybe, and not really because I was very, I think I've been lazy my life. I don't really like to go out. So my mom would go shopping with my sister, and then I would help here in the house to put stuff away. And I was more into like playing with my brother or stuff like that. I was never like, let me go out and be social with the community. I started doing that when I started working here. So to me, it wasn't that noticeable because I wasn't exposed to it as much.
I see. And when you were working as a family worker, just to be clear, that was in New Brunswick.
Correct.
And do you still work as a family worker? Is that the same agency, or what's the trajectory there?
So I do. I have a different position now, you could say. It's completely different, basically, because it is still the same thing, but here in New Brunswick, things were different. There was more of that sense of a family worker. And now I work in Part1, which is different. It's more of a office work. So I'm a business. I work as a family worker / assistant director. So I have to do a lot of the preschool, but it's for a nonprofit organization. So I started here in New Brunswick in a small private provider, which was only basically owned by a lady, and she didn't even own the building. She owned the center. She was the director owner of the center, but not of the building. I now work for a nonprofit organization that has a preschool within their agency. So it's a little bit bigger because it's owned by a big corporation and they have different offices. So it's not only preschool. I work for the preschool department, but I've been there for over 10 years now. So it's more like a community, even though I work in a preschool and with the education, there's times that I'll help with like the senior department, or we have different departments, transportation, if there's nobody that does transportation, because it's an organization. So I'm under the preschool program, but my boss could tell me, you could go work today with the seniors and help, which doesn't happen, but we do get more exposure to that. So it's a little bit different. It's the same because you still have to, and unfortunately I have to say that in Part1, there's not as many resources when it comes to family. Like, let's say there's a person getting abused. There's not a domestic violence unit in Part1. My closest resource would be New Brunswick. So it helped me a lot because working in New Brunswick, because I was able to get a lot of resources, but then it's harder for the families because they're farther away. They're not local. There's not a lot of counseling in Part1. So if I wanted to refer a family that is being abused or they're dealing with death or something, it's a lot harder to get them help over there than it is here in New Brunswick, than it was here when I worked here. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So I'm curious, you began working as a family worker, and it seems like you started forming your own family around the same time.
Correct. Yes.
So
I am.
So yeah, you have, how many children do you have?
I have 3 children.
And they've been raised in New Brunswick for most of their lives?
Mm, no, I could say more in East Brunswick because when I gave birth to my first child, even though I worked here in New Brunswick, I lived in Somerset. So she didn't have any education there in Somerset. And then when my firstborn I had my second child. My firstborn was 2 years old, and my second child was born. I moved to East Brunswick, and so we lived there, and they started their education in East Brunswick. And then now it's been 4 years that we've lived in New Brunswick, so their education started in East Brunswick, and now they've been here 4 years in New Brunswick. So
So I'm curious about how you got involved in the Lincoln Annex. You said your daughter goes to Lincoln Annex, correct? And she's in a gifted program?
correct. I'm sorry, you cut off again. I can't hear you at all.
Oh, no problem. That your daughter's is in a gifted program, and that's why she's in Lincoln Annex.
Correct. So what happened is that when we moved from East Brunswick to New Brunswick, my daughter was in the 2nd grade, and she finished her year there. I was not happy with the father of my children, so I decided to leave him. And unfortunately, in the Mexican community, it's not something that you do. So my mom, when she found out, she wasn't happy with that because she was like, "Does she hit you?" And he didn't. I didn't have a domestic violence that I was aware of. I didn't think I was being, abused physically, or that I ever was cheated on. Who knows? I didn't think so. Till the day I don't think so. It was more that unfortunately the father of my children it affected us in that sense that I was like, he's abusive to me. I grew out of love for him, and I didn't want to be there anymore. So we moved. I instead of staying in East Brunswick, I'm a very hot-tempered person. I'm sorry. You're gonna say something?
No, I'm so sorry. It's just you cut out a little bit. So we didn't really hear what you were saying.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so
So it cut out. You were saying that that you didn't leave him because he was abusing you or cheating on you, and then it cut out.
okay. So when I spoke to my mother, that wasn't something that in believe she thought that was a reason for you to leave somebody. She said, well, if he's not, you should stay there. He's the father of your children, have children with him.
I'm so sorry, Maria. There's a strange sound. We keep.
I'm like, no, I don't want to. Okay, so like I said, it's a different upbringing for my mother, so she didn't think it was a reason for me to leave the father of my children. So it was just I didn't know how to react. I think that I didn't think about losing everything that I had already built in my in East Brunswick, and I wasn't. He didn't want us to separate, so he was very stubborn about it. And because I worked in a school environment, I didn't want to have like any police involved or anything, and I just left the house and didn't think about about anything about I'm gonna go back to New Brunswick. I didn't think about the consequences at the time, you could say, of me having to move my children and to have to deal with a lot of the issues that I have here in New Brunswick because of my children's education. So again, I kind of think that I repeated the cycle that my mom did. And, I knew that I wasn't going to be, obviously with my salary, I wasn't going to be able to raise, because by then I had my younger son as well. So I wasn't going to be able to raise 3 children in an apartment without, support. Or even if I did, if I live far away, I'm very protective of my children. I know that in our family, unfortunately, there's a lot of abuse, of a lot of, physical, sexual abuse that my relatives think that it's okay and that I don't agree with. So I didn't really want my cousins or my uncles to have to help me with my children, I could say. So I decided to move in with my mom, who owns a house here in New Brunswick, because it's harder, and since I couldn't trust my family, I couldn't see myself trusting other adults around my children. So I had to come back to my house, and I wanted to move to California. But starting all over again with 3 children by yourself, it's harder. I don't really know. Even though I had a job almost secure in California, I think because I knew already New Brunswick and everything, I said, you know what, it's easier here. I know that my mom was never gonna have my children, and my dad, I knew they were, like, I have a stepdad, so I knew they were gonna be a great support system. I could trust them, and continue to work and continue to provide for my children. So when I moved back to New Brunswick, I didn't expect things to be the same as when I left. And it's funny because my 2 daughters, my older 2 daughters, obviously went back to Roosevelt because they were still in elementary grade levels. When they went back there, I noticed a lot of things hadn't changed. For example, the building is the same way that other than a coat of paint, nothing has changed. The library is in the same place. It's not an inviting place as a school, which was a little frustrating, but I think it was most frustrating the way that the administrators treat the parents and treat the children. So it was my first daughter's year in school, and a security guard was very disgusting to her. Like, he spoke to her in a very unprofessional manner. And since I had already worked in education and I know what is expected, it was really upsetting to me to see that, wow, here in preschool, when I worked here, we push families to, know how to maneuver the system and where the resources are and what they need, and to come back here and see that a lot of that isn't followed. So it kind of upset me, but I didn't, I'm not that strong-willed to be able to advocate as much as I should for my children, even though I should be able to, because that's basically what my profession is. It was very hard because, I feel that it's very like, oh, she's one of those parents that's a troublemaker or a hard person to have to deal with. But I was like, no, it's just something that I need to advocate for my children. So I always go and find out what's going on in the school. And if something's bothering me, I always make it a point to address it. And with the Lincoln Annex, that's how it started. I didn't know about it, even though I have children that go, my daughter goes there. And I advocated more because coming from Roosevelt, it's a whole different environment what my child's being exposed to at the Lincoln Annex, that she herself feels it. So I said, why would I not fight to defend a school that I know is doing great compared to a lot of these other schools that, they could use a lot more improvement. It's really hard. It's really hard for me to understand how, as a superintendent, as an administrator, as anything in education, could you not see that the school is doing so much better than a lot of your schools, and you're going to take it down and then lie about it? Because when I heard about it, it was through Charlie, actually. Charlie had gone to one of the meetings. I really liked Charlie, the news reporter, how he expressed himself and how he asked questions and how unprofessional the Board of Ed was. I was like, you know what? I don't understand what is going on, but maybe they're right. So I met the superintendent, and when I went to East Brunswick, well, my children went to East Brunswick, I noticed a difference. Like the community is more involved, the administrators are more involved. There was not one single event that I went to in East Brunswick where the superintendent wasn't there. Whether it be back to school night, a parent meeting, or whether it be what is it called? An activity. Like, let's say they had a festival in East Brunswick, the superintendent is there. He made time to speak to his children. He made time to know the community. And when I moved to New Brunswick, not once did I see the superintendent in any of the meetings. And let me tell you that I'm very involved in my children's education. Whenever they have a meeting, whenever they have an activity, the Lego night or whatever it may be here in New Brunswick, I do my best. A movie night, whatever it is, I do my best effort to make it to their events, because I think it's important for my children to know that if it's their education and I want them to be involved in. How can I prove that to me other than by me being involved with them as well and talking to them about it and making them understand that it is very important. And the first time that I met the superintendent personally, I had seen him on videos, or I had looked at the New Brunswick Public School website and had known who the superintendent was. The first time I met him was at a Lego night when he came to say that the school was not for sale, which was in a February meeting. And you know, that there was people spreading rumors, like he always says, that, you know, that are not true, that the school was not on sale. And that really bothered me, because on the February meeting, a couple weeks later, a Board of Ed meeting, it comes out to, they're saying that, yes, it's true that, you know, the school is on sale. So I'm like, something's wrong here. Why is he hiding it? And, you know, just living here, this as an adult made me realize I didn't see it as a child. I did live it, but I did not get it now till adulthood, I could say, is that, and working obviously as a family worker here in New Brunswick, that they really don't want things to change, I think, because even our streets, I lived in East Brunswick, I drove in East Brunswick, and the snow was cleaned, you know, right away. Here in New Brunswick, it takes days for them to clean things, if they ever clean, for them to fix. There's community members that make so much noise, and like once we called the cops when we moved here because somebody was parked in our parking lot, and that's what they told me, to call the cops, and they didn't do nothing about it. They never showed up. Or the little things that I noticed here that happened, the library. It's a public library, should be inviting. I think it's very important for my children, or for all the children, to learn and to know how to read, because I think that's one of the biggest problems in education here, is that a lot of them don't understand. You know, it's not comprehend. If you can't comprehend, it's harder for you to further your education. So I really wanted to push my children to go to the library, which is something that we did when we lived in East Brunswick. We went every weekend to the library, or even during the week we went, so that they could choose new books, even though the school provided them with that as well. I wanted them to get involved. And when I went here, I was so disgusted because I saw homeless people there. I saw people sleeping at the library. So I'm like, I don't feel safe for my children to be here. And I noticed a lot of things that are here targeted, like the parks. The closest park to me is the Joyce Gilmer Park, which is disgusting. There's drug addicts there. There's a lot of noise. My children get scared to go to the library. So I'm like, they get scared to go to the library. They get scared to go to the park. Those are places that my children should be in a good, you know, safe place and fun for them to do. So then I'm like, wait, is this why there's a lot of gang involvement, a lot of dropout rate? Like, what's causing all of this? That, you know, the community is not helping. Like in Part1, there's like the New Brunswick, I'm sorry, they had a swimming pool. I remember when we moved here through the YMCA, New Brunswick no longer has that. Like, I feel that they keep on cutting programs that could benefit our children. They made the teen center so far away, and then you have to have a membership. And there's so many requirements, which makes it so hard for children to get involved. Like the family center in East Brunswick, they have a community, center. They have movie night. You could drop off your children, and your children get to interact with other children. They have ice cream night, and everything is open to the public. You don't even have to live in East Brunswick, and you could go. And here, I find it that it's so hard for you to do like good things for children. So I'm like, now, on top of all that, I have to deal with not having a safe park, that I have to travel all the way to Florida to take my children for a good vacation, or that I have to travel far, you know, um, for my children to have a good time and not have it in my own town frustrated me. Now they want to take one of the best schools, and that's how I became involved. I'm sorry, that was so long. I just
No,
went
you're
in.
fine. It makes a lot of sense. You've identified this challenging environment in New Brunswick, and especially in comparison to the opportunities that East Brunswick provides. And it seems like Lincoln Annex School was one of the jewels of New Brunswick and a safe haven for your daughter. And now they've decided to demolish it, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct. And then, getting involved in when I started going to the city, which is, I actually remember meeting you in one of the city hall meetings. You've noticed how they're not, they're not even professional. They can't even, the guy that was on his phone and you checked him, you told them, like, you're not even paying attention in this meeting, you're on your phone, things like that I never saw, like, in any place, or that I found out that Cahill is really good friends with the guy that owns the warehouse. And I mean, no matter how much they say that that's not a warehouse, it only takes you to drive there. You see McKinley School, that's the name of the school, I think, yeah, McKinley, which is literally like less than a block away, well, because it's a long block, Van Dyke, but they're in the same place. So you're driving to school on a factory looking building, and you see the next building, which is a factory, the same way. Like, there's so many things that make you think, like, yes, a lot of students unfortunately have said, my parents work in the factory next door, so maybe as a child that, I know it affects a child. You grow up thinking that it's okay to be in a factory, and not further your education, because the dropout rate, even though there's millions of dollars being invested in this town, dropout rate is still low, very high, I'm sorry, graduating rate is very low. And I'm not going to sit here and say that we're stupid, because nobody's going to convince me of that. I feel that a lot of us had a lot of opportunities. It's just how the system failed us, by not providing us with great teachers. I remember there was a year when we were in school, we didn't have a math teacher for a whole year, and nobody did nothing about it. So I know that for a whole year, we didn't learn nothing. A lot of the students were playing, or we learned how to play cards. And like, I know that this wouldn't happen in East Brunswick.
What year was that? That happened to you? What grade were you in? Around what year was?
That was in the early 2000s. So it happened in New Brunswick here a lot. Even it still continues to happen. I still keep getting involved, because the same problems that we've always had, we continue to have. I actually have a friend, an acquaintance, that he's actually the person that works with New Brunswick today. Carlos Ramirez, he was just posting about how he was frustrated because he didn't have a teacher for a whole year. And I'm like, how is that even possible? Like, how are you continuing to do this to the children? So they're just going to either fail or pass a grade without having learned nothing a whole year, and you're okay with this. And it continues to happen a lot. Or where there's a lot of subs, It's just very hard, I think, growing up in New Brunswick and having for me, I see that there's a lot of money involved. Like, I work in the failing district, I work in part-time boy, and when we apply for grants, we get what we want. And if you choose not to do what you can with that money, that's something that as an administrator, you chose, you didn't want to, I don't know, help your community or get this children's education. And unfortunately, the parents are okay with it. They didn't do anything about it, or they didn't know to do anything about it. And I think that was the problem with my mother. I think that if my mother would have known better than having us, have the difficulties or challenges that we did growing up in education, she would have done more if she would have known. But unfortunately, it's hard, because now I feel that in districts like New Brunswick, how do I word this? You have to, like, constantly monitor the people doing their jobs, and not they don't do it, which to me makes no sense. I'm like, how do you work at a factory, and if you don't produce a certain amount of I guess items or perfumes, whatever factory you work for, they're going to fire you. And how does a teacher who has a tenure or who knows the superintendent or whatever the case may be, you know, that's doing things that they shouldn't be doing, or that is not teaching the way they should be teaching, how are they able to stay? So, and I know that happens a lot here in New Brunswick, so it's very, and you know, a lot of districts or a lot of parents don't get involved, I guess. So that's a frustration that also motivated me to get involved with the Lincoln Annex, and continues to be, you know, a reason.
Absolutely. I wanted to go back to something that you said. You said that the administration doesn't treat the parents and the children very well. And I just wondered if you could say more about that.
Okay, so I'll give you one perfect example. One day in the aftercare program, I'll give you two examples, one with a teacher and one with aftercare program. The worst was with the aftercare program, which I know is not a employee of the Board of Ed, but they still have some say on it. I would go and pick up, I work very late, so my sister would pick up my children from me. I have a younger sister who's from my mom's second marriage. She would help me pick up my children because she was in school. And when she, you know, obviously high school gets dismissed before elementary school, so my sister would pick my children up. And one day she's like, I'm so tired, I don't want to pick up your children anymore. They're so rude in the school, which is Roosevelt. I was like, okay, whatever. Then I started, you know, I asked my boss, you know, I'm going to have to leave earlier because this is what's going on. And she's like, yeah, you know what? It's fine because my job is flexible. I started picking my daughter up. And one day I arrived late. I was like, well, you know what? I had till 6 to pick them up. I'll finish this project. And then once I'm done, it gives me enough time to drive back to New Brunswick and pick my children up on time. I get here at, I remember it was 5:43. And she always makes comments like, hurry up, this parents, this is a free program, you know, they need to be here on time, they can't be here sleeping, whatever the case it is. But she just went on and on about how parents were not you know, that they would have their children there, and that she had things to do. And in my head, because I didn't want to be rude to her, I just kept on saying like, well, you get paid till 6. I don't know what the big deal is, but I kept on and just picked up my child and stood quiet. Mind you, there was over 13 parents there. That day, I remember that it was a hard day for me because I left from my job with a headache because I had to work with numbers and, you know, work issues. So I was already frustrated. And unfortunately, I'm the type of person that I don't speak up. Instead of it, I just like get upset on myself, and then, you know, you cry out of anger sometimes. So that's basically what happens to me. I remember that I let it go that one time. Then it was a Friday, and I also went to pick up my child late, and again with problems at work. And she said, oh, it's Friday, I have things to do, go home, relax. And these parents are here, they don't think I have things to do. Like, she went on and on, so unprofessional about why she was so upset and talking about parents. So I said, oh no, I'm not going to sit here and argue with her because there's 13 parents and 14 parents here. We all came around the same time most of the time. So I said, I'm not going to sit here and argue with her. But that day I really got upset. Like, I'm like, if I say something to her, I might say things that are going to be offensive to her. And I don't want, you know, you don't want to speak out of anger. You need to control yourself. And then I waited till Monday, and I called her supervisor and I said, listen, I don't know what she's going through, and I completely understand that it's Friday, you want to go home, I want to go home. I got home really tired. I said I have to go pick up my children, but I'm not going to take it out on my children. Whatever I go through at my job, it's my job. I'm going through whatever it is. You can't take it out, especially at your workplace. I could never imagine going to my job and giving my boss an attitude, and for her to say, you know what, it's fine. No, it's not fine. And I'm like, I don't know what other parents are dealing with or what they're going through, but it's very offensive to have to go you come tired, or even if you come in a good attitude and you're, hello, how are you? And you hear a lady just going off, somebody that's supposed to represent education or somebody who's supposed to be there working, hearing her go on and on about something, I reported her, and her boss said he would get back to me. I called him twice after, no response, nothing. And
Wow.
and yeah, and but she did change her. She's going back to her old ways. I don't think she'll ever be able to change because she's been allowed to do it for so long. Apparently, a lot of parents that I spoke to, they're like, oh, ella siempre es así. But that's not okay. For me, it's not okay. For you, this is your job. I'm sorry. I don't need to put up with it. My children don't need to put up with it. And a lot of people are so used to it. So that's one example. So like, it's just, I don't think that either her or her supervisor cared enough, because if she didn't, they told her that she couldn't do it anymore, she would stop or she would change her profession. Something would change, and it didn't, because she continues to be this person. Like, I don't no longer have my daughter there, but my sister, my stepfather's daughter, another, daughter that she has that lives here, she also has her children in Roosevelt. She's like, you know what, during the summer, just a couple of days ago, she's like, Lucy was so disgusting, but you know what? We already know how she is. So we just let it go. I'm like, oh my God. And she continues to be this person, And it's still allowed. So I'm like, it's crazy that, they're not, to them, it's so normal. Or I know that in East Brunswick, if somebody ever dared to speak like that, like we all know it, let's not lie. If a parent went complaining there about somebody behaving like that, they would get fired on the spot. There's no questions asked because you did wrong. And here it's more like, I've heard like a lot of the parents now that were in the Lincoln Annex, thank God it has never happened to me, but they've said to them, well, you have no rights because you're illegal. Who are you to talk like that to a parent? Like, don't ever talk to me like that because we're gonna have a problem. The school might not do nothing, but I'm going to speak to you and I'm going to address it because, people don't really like when you speak back to them. So I guess they like stop, not that you're going to hit them or be abusive to them, but you tell them to stop and they stop. And because I know that lady I took my child from the aftercare program. I said, I know it's free, but it's not free for you. You're not doing charity here. So I started paying a lady to babysit my child. And they're like, well, take him to the aftercare program. I was like, nope. I'd rather pay somebody and know that my child's okay, not getting abused or getting treated or having to hear this crazy lady go off. It's not something I want my children to know, that think that it's okay. Another example was I went to a principal to complain about how he spoke to my child. He cursed at my child. He told my child she was a damn child. When I went to complain to the principal, she's like, oh, I'm going to address it.
What child? What did he call her?
A damn child. You damn child. You don't know how to listen. So I was like, first of all, my daughter's not a damn child, and she does know how to listen. She's new in the school, so she's not going to know how to maneuver herself around. So she was just trying to ask you, where does she go? Because she doesn't know. My daughter came crying. She did not want to go back to school. She had never experienced that. Again, going from East Brunswick to New Brunswick, a whole different, environment. She would have never been spoken to like that. Or maybe it's possible because possibly things like that happen in East Brunswick, but I know they're addressed. Thankfully, we never had a situation over there. Both of my children were very known in the schools. They were, they were liked. A lot of the principals, the principal and the teachers were very nice till the end. They always said how much they were going to miss them. They still kept in contact with us after we left. And it's not that they had only 5 children. It's the same amount of children. It's an elementary school grade. It's a different thing. Well, anyways, going back to the principal. When I told her my concern, she said that I, as a parent, had to understand the security because that was his first year there, and that he was working with high school students. And I mean, you're a mother, you could just imagine how hard that could be. And I said, time out. You just made it worse, I told her. Because how dare you give me as an excuse that I should be understanding to him because he comes from a high school environment. I don't care where he comes from, because one thing I know is that you give them contracts. And when you give them contracts, they know what children they're working with. My child is in third grade. There's no way my daughter, my skinny little child, could intimidate a huge security guard for him to speak to her that way, number one. Number two, my daughter was not disrespectful to her at all, to him. So if my daughter would have shown some type of disrespect to him, for him to speak to her that way, maybe, and just maybe, I would understand, even though it would be hard for me to understand it, because again, we're talking about a third grader against an adult. There's no excuse for what he did. Please don't give me excuses for him, because you're not gonna sit here and try to convince me that he was right, or that he should be not, he should be excused, because he was talking to a minor, somebody who, for that matter, wasn't even disrespectful to him. So it's like, it's just there, and to me, it was so disgusting and embarrassing to know that a principal could really use that as an excuse, meaning that this wasn't the first time that she has excused or has, dealt with situations like that. And her cheap excuse is, oh, well, they come from whatever environment, or for her to even think that that was appropriate, to me spoke volumes of how they think it's okay to speak to some parents, and it's not. There's different things. Or when I complained about the food, oh, are you sure that she read it? Now you're calling my daughter stupid. She doesn't know how to read, that the food is expired or taste. Like, it's things that they say here in this town that you sit back and think like, wow, like you guys are really either that not educated or that comfortable to think that it's okay and continue to do, which I think is a combination of both. When I speak to some of the people that work here, I'm like, how do you even work for education? I don't even think you yourself have education, honestly. And it's really sad. So, and I don't see that in the Lincoln Annex. And Lincoln Annex is more, the teachers are very, very professional. When I remember that when we went, even the first year, and they do this every single year, they have like the back to school night, they give you like the resume of how, they're doing or what they're going to do for your children. And not in Roosevelt, they're not that prepared. I'm not going to say that my son's teacher in Roosevelt is not good, because my son still attends Roosevelt. She's really good. I just think administrators in Roosevelt are not up to par with education, unfortunately, based on my experiences.
I'm curious why you think that parents and children are so disrespected in New Brunswick in comparison to East Brunswick. Like, what is it about? Why don't they care?
I honestly think it's because of years of parents not being involved, and years of the same staff members. There's teachers have been here for many years. And I honestly, a lot of people are going to get mad at this, but I completely disagree with tenure. I think that tenure, I've heard it myself, and they're like, well, we really can't do much about it because the teacher has been here for so long. I actually heard somebody that really got under my skin and said to me in my face, well, they can't do nothing to me because I'm tenure already. Or, oh, now I'm going to do what I want because I'm tenure. So I honestly think it's, it's hard. They think they're I don't know. They have I think it's a combination also of the parents not getting involved, because it is true. When I lived in East Brunswick, the parents were very involved. But it also, I think parents would be more involved here in New Brunswick, because when I worked here, we had huge turnouts for our events. And it could be the stupidest thing. I'm not saying, like they were stupid, but, it could be minimum. A lot of people are like, oh, it's food that brings parents. No, it's just you creating relationships with them. But I think it only takes one of those nasty attitudes to stop parents from like getting involved, because they feel, especially I noticed that honestly, when I worked here in New Brunswick, the Mexican community was very respectful towards the teachers. So if the teacher tells you this is what it is, you believe it, or you take it's true because she's the expert. She's, she's the one who knows. So I think it's a combination of both, of the parents not knowing how to voice their rights for their children, and because here, I mean, I'm pretty sure you've seen how the superintendent talks. They have no, I don't know, no, they don't really think there's consequences to their actions, basically, I think.
Yeah, and it just, that one comment you made about the teacher saying, you're illegal, you don't have any rights, that just struck me as terrible. And
Correct.
I just wonder if it's something that it's easy to pick on someone in that way, or if that's something that happens a lot, it just struck me as really awful.
To me too, and I'm like, and I could see it happening. Like I said, I've been very, very blessed because I also think that a lot of all my children, when they moved here to New Brunswick, they've had great experiences because I actually know that, like, how they say that there's levels of the teachers, how they teach. I've had experiences where my own daughter has said, you know what, I'm going to be with a really good teacher. So I'm like, wow, that's sad that some child is not going to be with a good teacher. Like, what does that mean? So, my daughter's like, there's teachers that teach better and those that don't really. Like, then why are they there? Like, so I think that I haven't been exposed to that because I think that a lot of people do get intimidated just because I speak English, and I know that they know that I'm going to go above whoever I have to go. When it comes to my children, I'm going to go, you think I'm going to stop at the teacher? No, I'll go to the principal. The principal doesn't address it, I'm going to the superintendent. The superintendent doesn't address it, I'm going to the state. I'm not just going to let it go. I need my children to have what they need, and it's not because I think that I'm better or anything, but because I know that that's what my children deserve. Like, I want them to have something better, and I'm gonna fight for them. And a lot of parents don't. I've seen when I worked in New Brunswick. I'll give you another experience, a horrible experience that I had. I actually was doing registration for preschool, and I remember a nurse. She was a very unprofessional, and I don't even know how and I know she worked after the fact. When I worked, we were doing registration, and there was this mother who was very shy. She didn't, they asked her, hey, what's your name? And she was like, Softy, oh, mi nombre es, whatever she said. And then the nurse grew frustrated. She told her, listen, mama, tienes que hablar más rápido, like you have to talk a little bit louder because there's a lot of people here and I don't hear you. And the lady was like shy and got all red and put her head down, and she said, okay. And then she's like, how old is your child? And then she didn't hear her, so then she just slams the table and she goes, mira, te dije, listen, I asked you to speak louder. I know that when you were giving birth, when you were making this child, you were screaming louder than what you're doing right now. So get it together. When she said that to that lady, I was like, oh my God, this lady's about to get beat up. Something's going to happen because how dare she say something like that to a parent? I was so, I could not believe it. I'm like, I did not hear it right. But I know that I heard it right because there was another lady. She was either Puerto Rican or Dominican. I can't remember because she even made a point to say it. She was definitely Puerto Rican. She said, oh, no, you did not. And then she started cursing at her to the point where the nurse had requested the security to escort her out because she was scared. She said, you need to be spoken more like that because you've been very disgusting to the parents here, and I don't understand why they don't know how to speak for themselves. But if you dare talk to me like that, you will get smacked. And I was like, oh. It's like you notice the difference of how some people react and some didn't, and I was like, I could not believe that she still had a job after another lady stood up for her. And she said, and you better believe that I'm going to speak to, she mentioned her name, and she said, I am cousins with somebody who works at the Board of Ed, and you will get fired because you do not speak like that to people. And I can't believe you've been doing like this. And people around here have allowed you to do that. That was like my first or second year working for New Brunswick. And I was so so amazed at how that happened and nothing really happened to her. She probably learned a lesson not to speak like that in front of somebody else who was going to get very aggressive with her, but that it was allowed and that she continued to have a job to me was very, very,
Was this nurse Latina?
yes, she was.
Wow.
Yes. Yes.
And she works for the city, right?
Yes, she works for the New Brunswick Public Schools. Well, she worked. I don't know. It's been years because I haven't worked in New Brunswick for over 10 years. So it happened when I had just started working, and that's why I started. I actually stayed in education because of that. Because I'm like, oh no, and that's one thing that I always remember. Like
You,
my first boss was very, very good at that. She always told us, "You treat people. These people are giving you a paycheck, so you will not scream at them. You treat them like they're gold." And that's something that I've always learned. So till the day when I speak to the parents in the community, they'll be like, "Oh, I'm sorry to bother you." I always tell them, "You're never a bother to me. This is my job. Don't ever, ever, ever." And you could ask any parent that I speak to. Don't ever feel like you're bothering me. I'm here for you, not for me to take. And it was really hard because at the beginning, some parents are not used to that. A mother can cry to me. She still visits me and she'll email me or send me, little notes at school, at work. And she's like, "You're the first person that I met that would greet us, that says good morning." And I feel so bad. She told me, she's like, "I feel so bad because I never said good morning to you because I was so angry. And I always walked angry in the building because I could not believe how nasty people could be in America." Because she came from Colombia. She's like, "I never thought people could be this disgusting in America." I was like, "It's not America. It's just people. And you don't let them get to you. And if somebody treats you wrong, even if it's me, you could always report it. You don't have to put up with it." So I've learned a lot from that. Like I've practiced it at my job. So whenever I get to work, I make sure that I'm in a good mood because I don't want to ever be the cause of a parent walking out crying or walking out mad. It has happened, I'm not going to say here that it hasn't because parents don't understand that sometimes there's things beyond my control. Like if you want to register your child and I can't, unfortunately, I have rules to follow. I can't make exceptions. Some people expect that. So they've walked out mad, but I can honestly say that even if I worked in a factory or wherever I worked, I would never not say hi to somebody or make them feel welcome because I've been there. I've seen how people who are supposed to help you out don't. So I'm like always trying to help out. It's just not, it's been an experience for me to learn from, I could say.
So it seems like, Lincoln Annex is this gem in New Brunswick, and then, it came out that the school was going to be closed down in order so that Rutgers and some other developers could build a cancer institute and make a lot of money. So it kind of sounds like, all these experiences, correct me if I'm wrong, were, maybe this is like the last straw. And so you got involved. And so, yeah, I'm curious about now the Coalition to Save Lincoln Annex that, formed in, what was it, like January, February 2020.
Correct.
And tell me about how that formed, how that struggle formed, how you got involved. You're a leader of it. Tell me about that because, tell me about that.
It formed just like that because, I think it's a few of us who, actually, I think it formed more because of Ms. Lilia and Cantina and Mr. Candido. They've always been good at advocating. I'm more of a shy behind the camera person. I don't really like to talk in public or to, unfortunately, I think that I've grown up where I was raised even to my mother, like even me, my first, I think, actual experience, I wasn't happy with the father of my children for many years. And I wasn't able to speak about it because we were always taught, not to be loud about things or you're raised to stay quiet, basically, and just, you could say, suck it up, I guess.
Question. Because I wanted to actually come back here. Do you think Is that, do you think because you were raised as a woman? Was it maybe because religion? Were you raised in a religious household?
Definitely, I think those are both factors. I think being raised as a woman and being raised in a religion are factors of that. Definitely a woman. My mom, it treats my brother completely different. She always treated my brother. And it's funny because my siblings, I have three siblings, two from my father, side, and one from my mother's side, that we grew up together. So my younger sister, which is from my second marriage, my mother's second marriage, she we always sit about that and we think about, our childhood and everything. Like, it's crazy how my mom, till the day, was very sheltered towards my even younger sister, which was she was more open about things, like letting her, like, we would not be able to go to the movies until we were 18. That, little things like that to us were huge. We couldn't go to friends' houses or do and have a childhood, you could say, while growing up with or exposing ourselves to other people. My mom wasn't big on that, or going out to Six Flags. We went to places like that as a family, never with friends. And with my sister, she was more open. But my brother, since he was 13, 14, he was, all over the place. He went out with his friends. He went to California to visit my father on his own. Like, it's definitely different way of being raised as a woman than it is as a female in my family, or also religion. Even though my mom was very upset because I did not marry, I've never believed in marriage. I never want to get married. So it wasn't that I didn't think I would fail in my partnership with the father of my children, but I never had that. I think, coming from a divorced family, and because of my environment, I never wanted to get married. So I knew that was clear to me. And even though she was upset about that, the fact that I lived with him and I had children with him, to her it was a marriage. So in her head, she was like, no se ve bien, like it doesn't seem right that you're going to leave him and you have three children. What are you going to do? I'm like, I don't care. I'm going to survive, but I don't want this cycle to continue. I think it's like a vicious cycle. Like I tell my mom, like, you grow up thinking that it's okay to live with somebody that you don't love. No, it's not. You cause more harm to those that you are with, and to yourself when you do that. Then, just going your separate ways and making it work. There's struggles. I'm not going to say that I do struggle a lot more now that he's not with us than when he was, but I know that I'm more at peace. And that's what, they don't teach you at church, or my mom doesn't, till the day, doesn't understand. Like, I met a lot of good marriages through my job. I can honestly say that it is not something that my family taught me, because I have a lot of uncles and aunts, and I've never seen like a solid relationship, which I'm not saying that, it's going to be fairy tales, but I know that you cheating on your wife, or having two families, or beating your wife up, or just living with her to emotionally abuse her, it's okay. Like, no. So that's why, it's definitely religious and being raised a female, definitely.
Where
Sorry.
do you think, no, you're fine. You're totally fine. Where do you think your disagreement with where you were raised came from? Like, how you came to form your own opinion? Where does that come from?
From my job, working and seeing how many families had very dysfunctional families. Like, you work with families and you hear their stories, and you see, like, my cousin, like, this thing I remember, I was 17, 18 years old, and it impacted me because I had my first daughter at 23, and I still think it was young. I wasn't prepared to have a child. I love my children, and I'm always love my children, but I definitely wasn't prepared. I shouldn't have children. And everybody in my family, even when I was 17, 18, when are you having children? You're late. What's going on? Are you a lesbian? What's going on? Like, they start questioning everything. And I'm like, what? It's just like, just living with my, like seeing how my family was raised, seeing how the families that I work were raised, and definitely having such a experience with my employer, I'm sorry, and that I saw how beautiful her relationship was with her husband, and it wasn't because, you know, it just was love. Like, I didn't grow up knowing that, you know, that was possible. So I think that affected, that
Mm.
motivated me. That, and even though, like I had said, the father of my children wasn't abusive, when I start thinking about it, I think he was emotionally abusive to me, and I would always stay quiet and having to deal with a lot of like, um, feeling so suppressed is the word, suppressed, right? When, you know,
Hmm.
I think that growing up, I didn't have any rights as a child. Whatever whatever happened in our home, you know, I didn't have a voice for it. Like, my mom said, this is what it's going to be, even if it had to do with me. Like, we had to put up with it, going from my home to living with the father of my children, and him having to tell me how, or as an adult, what to do, and me just staying quiet. Like, all of that builds up, and you're like, no, enough. Like, I have a mind and I have a voice, and I need to have my voice heard, you know. So I think, yeah, my experiences, and knowing that that's not the only way in life helped me be able to speak a little more about, you know, different situations.
Well, that's wonderful to hear, and you do have a very powerful voice from what I've seen. So can definitely confirm that. And I'm just curious about something you just said about not having any rights growing up. Was that as an immigrant, as a Mexican, as a woman, as a girl, or all of those?
I don't think it was much. I honestly, I've always said this. I've never experienced that I could think of or felt about my immigrant status. I think I think whether I would have stayed in Mexico or not, I just think that's my mom's mentality, my family's mentality. I think we would have still been the same. Like, my mom is a very strong person. Like, even my cousins, they'll it amazes me because I have over 20 cousins now that live in the United States, and they always come to my mom for advice because she's so strong-willed. You know what I mean? Like, everybody says what your mom says goes, and I'm not like that. I'm like, no, it's what I feel. It's like what I want to do. If I shouldn't, like, I think it was so many years of me doing what everybody told me to do, then I'm like, no, I want to do things on my own. I want to do, you know, I don't think immigrating was ever. I think it's just family and how we were raised. Mm-hmm.
I see. So what kind of work have you done in the Coalition to Defend Lincoln Annex?
Uh, Collaborative or on my own?
Either or both.
So I do a lot of collaborative work just because it's harder for me to express myself, um, you know, or to address things with people, just because I know that there's um, different opinions or different information, and I don't like to give information unless I'm completely aware of what's going on. I don't like to go and even with this, I'm going to be very honest with you. With the Lincoln Annex Coalition, it's been very hard because there's a lot of miscommunication. And to me, that's something very frustrating. I'm like, we need to be very, very careful on how and what we say, and that it's accurate information, because I think it only takes one mistake for somebody to just say, no longer want to be part of this because I heard that this is, you know, what you have in mind. And things like that personally affect me. So I've kind of learned to stay away from, oh, they're looking for political reasons, or they're looking for to stop the sale because they don't want to something better for the immigrant community. Like I've tried to have to, well, remind myself all the time, you're not here for them, you're here for your daughter. You know that what you're doing is right for your daughter. You know, like it's very hard. So I do more of I go out and advocate, and if I need more, they need help with certain things, yes, but I don't really like to do it on my own, because I feel that there's a lot of negative people within the coalition or within the community that have you misinterpret what you say, and I don't want it to affect my personal life or my work life. So I'll do as much as I can without having to, put my children or myself at risk.
And what has that relationship between the community and those of you who are very firmly fighting to defend and keep open Lincoln Annex been like?
It's been a struggle. It's been a struggle, just because even though I don't believe that I've ever cared what people say, but it does frustrate me, because I know that a lot of people do hear what, the he, she say, and it's harder for us to fight this battle because a lot of people are not getting the right information, or they're being discouraged by people that I would think would have the best interest of the children.
So there's disagreement among the parents about the best way forward?
Correct, because of the community. So like I said, when I spoke to you about that illegal situation, one of the parents, when we're having the meeting, I'm like, one of the things that frustrates me the most is that there's 860 students in this school. Why is it that when we fight for this school, it's only 4 of us? Like, we already call each other cousins, because we're all of this in this battle together. And then I noticed that, I see people fighting over for, it's like the priorities are not where they should be. Like, I'm like, how do you have a voice and you speak to them, oh, let's go and defend Lincoln Annex, because, oh no, but we don't fight. But then you see that same person who says that she doesn't fight go at a laundromat and fight for a machine, or because her husband, who's cheating on her, goes and fights for that husband. Why are you fighting for this guy when he's the one who has some loyalty towards you, not that woman that you're trying to beat up for whatever reason? Like, that is very frustrating, that I think that a lot of parents don't know how much power they have in defending Lincoln Annex, and they have other priorities, to be doing other things, watching a novela, than to spend an hour at a Board of Ed meeting. So it's very hard, very, very hard, because it's different priorities, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, human beings are so diverse,
Mm-hmm.
and people are under a lot of stress, like you've been saying, and administrators, like what you said before, Yeah, I'm curious actually about how the administrators and the teachers have responded to this particular coalition to defend Lincoln Annex. Have they joined the fight? Have they been verbally against it? What's it been like?
So from my personal experience, other people have said to me that they have different experiences. My teachers from my daughter's classrooms, they've been, I'm not gonna say supportive or not, because I don't think it's easy for them. Like, I wouldn't want anybody to lose their job, but I know from some of the teachers that they were, I know it's true, they were asked not to speak about the matter. And I actually had it's very hard. Again, I come from a family, my mom, my own mother is against me being against, something, because in her head, how are you going to tell the teachers how to do their jobs? Like, they're really just helping. Like, look at the undocumented population. Like, they're doing whatever they can. No, that's, and I continue to argue with her. Oh, it's free. My own mother said to me, in Mexico, you have to pay for school. There's no such thing as free education. So just be grateful that you have. Or they give you bad food, it's a mistake. They're human. It could happen. Not as often as it happens here. So that's what it's really hard to get people out of that mentality because, again, my own mother, I have to fight with her because they don't understand that it's not free. There's somebody paying for it. We're not talking about hundreds of dollars. We're talking about millions of dollars that you just think it's okay not to give to the people that you're supposed to serve. Like, it's
Right. And it's not
very,
free
exactly.
because of taxes.
Exactly. And not only taxes, New Brunswick gets a lot of federal funding. It's crazy the amount of money that, you could find out that they get. Again, and I don't know, maybe you will disagree with me or other people will disagree with me. This is how I was raised. My mom always said, listen, if we're poor, we're all going to be poor. But one thing I'm going to teach you, Janet, and she always told me that because they call me Janet at my house, is your children are your children, so you need to keep them well. Like, I can never see myself having my nails and my hair done and for my children to be causing pity in the streets, for my children not to have underwear or not to have shoes. I'm not saying that they have to be brand name shoes, but to have shoes. You go to Walmart and you find really cheap shoes. If you go on sales to Nike, you find really nice shoes. It's not about, we're in America. You could really get good deals and have your children dress nice. But when I see children having the same pair of jeans for 2 days because you can't get them uniforms, that to me is unbelievable. I've found shirts and pants for my children's school uniforms for under $3. $250 I've purchased pants for at Old Navy, at what's the other one? Old Navy and Justice. I buy stuff from Justice for my children, and it's good quality clothing, but it's cheap. So what I'm trying to get at is that, to me, I feel that the superintendent should be like a father. So if you're telling me that this district doesn't have money, and it's like me telling my children, I don't have money to feed you, but I have money to go out drinking, then there's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with my priorities or me as a mother. I shouldn't be a mother if I think that me going out to drink or hang out with my friends is more important than having my children with a good, with the tools that they need to succeed in life. So for me to hear that the superintendent in New Brunswick is making more than the average superintendent in New Jersey, and there's some good schools in New Jersey, and the superintendent who has been a superintendent of failing district for over 4 years is making more than a lot of them, speaks volumes of where your head is. Because you as a superintendent should not be okay making more money than a lot of people, knowing that your districts are failing or do not even have quality and the quality environment for your children to learn in.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm curious now about the coronavirus epidemic.
Mm-hmm.
How, because especially, yeah, well, I mean, let's just start out with, when did you learn about it? How did you react to it? And how did you expect it to impact your children's education and your work?
I learned about it from the news first, and then I didn't expect it to impact us the way it did because this is America. I really thought we were going to be more prepared for things, and even though I've never been a Trump supporter, I thought that even though he could mess things up, I would think that the administration wouldn't. So to me, it was like, you know what? It's sad. It's happened. To me, it seemed like the Ebola situation or other, viruses or pandemics that have been going around in the world. I didn't expect it to get the way it did, or from it to affect my job, my relatives' jobs. I was blessed because even though I work for a nonprofit organization, I do work for a school, so I still had job security and obviously pay security. So even though I worked from home, I still knew that I was going to have a paycheck. It impacted more like I'll give you an example. My brother, he's a supervisor at a restaurant, and he was laid off right away, and he had to survive for 3 months without unemployment, without the stimulus, because the stimulus did not come right away, and because he doesn't have a direct deposit, his direct deposit didn't come right away. So it was harder for him being documented. We're all citizens in my family. And then I have two siblings. My older sister and my younger sister both decided to move out of New Jersey back to California. So it all impacted us differently because my older sister had just given birth and was taking her family leave. So, she was still having income. And then my other youngest daughters she's still in college, but she works at a mall. She also had no income. And she saves money. So she had something to back her up. But then I also have undocumented family members. I have both citizens, residents, and I also have undocumented families that live here in New Jersey. So I think it was I have different opinions because I have different experiences. I have uncles that unfortunately haven't been able to work since the pandemic, and they're not here legally. So now that they're not only being faced with a virus, and have to battle for their own lives. They haven't been able to work. They haven't been able to provide for their families. So it's very hard to see that we're all human, and that there's people they're really not thinking about the humane part of it and saying, oh, well, they're illegal. That's their problem. Even if you're illegal, I think you should have some type of support. And it's been very hard that my relatives have not been able to, or the frustration that they feel, because I have a few relatives that were diagnosed with the coronavirus, and it's been 4 months now, and they still have the coronavirus. They keep on going back, and they keep on getting tested, and they keep on testing positive. And even though some of them are feeling no symptoms, you still can go back to work. So, you're blessed that even though you have the virus, you're healthy, thank God, but you have no income for 4 months. And how much can you save, and continue to live off your savings, or continue to survive without any type of support, being here undocumented or being here documented? I think it was just hard. I learned that it's sad for me, but I feel that we're very, very overall. And I really stress this to my children. I have 3 children, and I have siblings. We all have different mentalities. I hope to God that all 3 of my children have humane sides to them, because it's very sad to see relatives who are here documented be against the undocumented population, or for them not to consider their health needs. I'm not asking, I don't think that we should, let's build them a mansion, but everybody, no matter what their legal status is, should have a decent lifestyle. And this pandemic has affected a lot of people, and the only thing that some of us can do is help financially, or to continue to advocate for better resources, or better support for just the humane side of us, I guess.
I agree, absolutely. And wow, it seems like you have a big family. It's so many different variety of experiences with COVID-19. I guess just to know a little bit more about your experience, you live yourself, your 3 children, and did you say you live with your mother and your stepfather in the same household?
Well, just my mother. My stepfather no longer lives with us.
How has it been adjusting to coronavirus, having someone older than you and then people who are very young in the same household? Because the older people are the more vulnerable populations, and children at first were deemed not to be as vulnerable. So what was that like? How did you transition? Did you, when the lockdown went into effect, were you, yeah, how was your experience there?
My experience was, I can honestly say I've always thought that I've been very blessed, just because um, thank God we're all healthy, and I've always taught my children, that it doesn't matter how bad things are. I've always said to myself, I thank God that I have three adorable children that are healthy. So at the beginning, when they said it affected the elderly, I only was concerned about my mother. So I made sure that we, had the necessary things that we needed uh, for us. And of course, always taking precaution with my mother, because obviously nobody wants their relatives to have it, and more, your mother. So, and then when they started saying that, the children's reactions were also bad or even worse, it it scared me, because I'm like, oh, definitely we're going to be in this lockdown forever. And even though, and I think I have very understanding children, and the good thing is that we always talk, because it's very, very important to talk to children, because I think that if I would have just told them we're going to lock them and I would have shielded them from what's going on, I think it would have been more like stressful. But it's been good. Like, I'll tell my children, guys, let's go to the beach now that the beach open. It's like, nope, thank you very much. Coronavirus is still out there. Let's not. Or when we go out to the protest, they try to be very careful. We stay with, amongst ourselves. We try to take precautions, and they're not. Even though I do take them out, like I like to travel with them. We travel within the country because we can't. The father didn't give us permission to leave the country. His little selfish self, you could say. Uh, so I do take them around New Jersey, Miami, to Canada. Well, not Canada, I'm sorry, to Niagara Falls, the New York side. Which, by the way, I did go to Canada, and thank God I was allowed to come back in. But they didn't. I didn't have a passport for them, so I do try to give them experiences, which I thought was going to be more difficult for them to understand, because even though, I don't give them big luxuries, I like try to take them to Six Flags, to the Great Wolf Lodge, whatever, like, restaurant is coming out that they might be interested. I try to give them different experiences so that they won't be just locked up in the house, or we go to the movies on a regular basis. We were always out. We go to the library in East Brunswick, to North Brunswick. We don't really like going to a lot of, like I said before, places here in New Brunswick, but I take them to parks, lakes, you name it, and I try to take them, that I could afford, and that we could have a good time, Pennsylvania or wherever. So to me, at the beginning, at the second month was very stressful, because I was like, oh my God, we're really locked in the house and we haven't gone out. And I kept on saying to them, I'm so sorry. And they're always very good kids. So they're like, Mommy, don't worry. We know it's not your fault. And I'm like, at the beginning, we were even scared to go to the back. They were like, it's airborne and you could get sick right away. And I'm like, I don't want you guys getting sick. And they have been very, very understanding, which has made it very less difficult than I expected it, because they're very mature, and I guess communication does. I know communication goes a long way, because they have not once said, "Oh, it's horrible. We're miserable here." My oldest daughter actually likes it. She's like, I think I just want to be homeschooled from now on, because I don't know her. It's sometimes with that she's not that open. I don't know if maybe my younger one does say that there's a lot of rude children at school, and that she doesn't really want to be exposed to them or hang out with them. So my oldest is like, no, even for the graduation, which to me is a big thing, and I celebrated her and I made her know that it was very important for us. She didn't want to be part of that, because she's like, I don't even want to see those children on a regular basis. Why would I want to see them now virtually? I'm like, Mommy, but it's your graduation. It's like you're moving up to high school. And I was like, they're good kids and they understand things. So I think it made it a whole lot easier for me. It's making it a whole lot easier for me. I don't know if the summer's going to be the same, because, the summer, now they don't have school, and I'm like telling them to read books and to write stuff, and they might get bored easier just because they don't have those connections, I guess, with their teachers or the students. But I'll see how that goes this summer. Even though I hear a lot of things are opening back up, I don't know. It's for us. It's been difficult, but we can't complain. We're blessed to have food in our tables, to have family, and I think that that's the most important. We have all our needs have been met. We don't really worry about our wants. Wants are more important for us. Mm-hmm.
How has been that experience, homeschooling your children and working from home? That's triple duty that right there.
For me, I honestly could say it hasn't been that hard. At the beginning, it was to adjust to a different schedule because usually I would get up and go to work. And now you have to get up, cook, do lunch, breakfast. I think the most difficult part for me is the cooking because I have 3 picky eaters. So a lot of the meals at school, they wouldn't complain about. But here at home, it's a different story. So you have to accommodate them and they have to go to work and do your job, and they're doing their school. But I have to honestly say that even before the pandemic, I've been very, very, very strong in my belief that a lot of maybe teachers or educators might not agree. Guys, sorry. Am I Danny? Sorry. A lot of people might not agree, but I've always taught my kids that they need to do their work on their own. I go to work, I get up, I go to work. That's my job. Their only job is to do their schoolwork. And if they have any problems, that I'm here to support them, but they should ask their teachers because they're the ones teaching. I had this experience where one time I was trying to teach my daughter math, and obviously the math that I learned is not the same math that they're teaching now. So with history and stuff like that, things might not change, but there's things that they teach differently nowadays. So I'm like, I don't want to hurt your education more. So if you give me more of an idea of how you're learning it, and I could find out if that's the way I know it, or Google it, and then we could work on it together, great. But you have all the resources in my house. In my house, I make sure that they have their phone, they have internet, and they have a dictionary, a lot of books that they could get information for. I'm like, I have to work for my things, you have to work for your education, because I'm not going to be in school with you. And if you're struggling with something, your teacher, none of your teachers have ever or will never will they call me to say, well, listen, Danny, or your son or your children are struggling. Can you help them over the phone? Like, you need to learn how to advocate for yourselves. So if you're having problems with something, you need to really let your teacher know. So in that aspect, I know a lot of families personally. I know a lot of parents who have voiced their concerns, that they say that they struggle with it. I haven't, because I've always given my children the tools to express themselves to their teachers. During the pandemic, my son was having hard with one of his homeworks, with assignments, because he was, it's homework or assignment, or whatever they call them now. But the teacher scheduled a time for her to meet with him so that she could teach him that subject. So other than scheduling and our eating, habits changing, I can honestly say it wasn't as complicated either, because they understood the lesson, or the teachers provided them with the support that they needed to get the answers that they needed.
I'm going to pause the recording for 1 second.
Mm-hmm.